Welcome back, War Room fans. Here we are. It's been a while since I've uploaded a video, but this one had to be done. No more waiting or anything. The quick battle system has been released by Nightingale, and it's still in beta. They're still ironing it out, but they have released the rules and everything for all us to start trying it out and giving them feedback. So here obviously is the old battle board. Now it's not the old battle board. Okay, one thing you guys have to understand with the quick battle system is it is not designed to replace this. This is still the main battle. This is how we resolve combats in War Room. The quick battle system though is for players or groups who want to try out the new system to see if it speeds up the play of the game and thus make it more enjoyable, because on a given weekend or given night, maybe if you can speed up the combat, which is the number one area of the game that really slows the process up when it comes to time, to maybe give the quick battle system a shot and see if you like it. So just to reinforce that point, guys, this board is not going away. This is still how combat is resolved unless your group decides to go with the quick battle system. Okay? So I'm going to try to approach this logically. I'm just going to go through the rules of the quick battle. I've set up on the side over here, I got a couple scenarios to walk us through it so that you can understand how the quick battle system works compared to the old. I keep calling it the old system. And I think that's some of the things about a lot of guys who are reading or just finding out about this, that it's like replacing this, and it is not replacing this. Okay, so I'm going to move this, and then here is the land combat chart that they pulled out, that I've pulled up on Board Game Geek. If you go into the thread that talks about the quick battle system, it has this link to Nightingale's site where you can pull it up, okay? So the very first thing about the quick combat system or quick battle system is we no longer have stances. Every unit is just given a static die roll total. It's like armor units on the surface, or the ground combat as I call it, they get 3, artillery gets 2, and infantry gets 1. Okay, so that's one way that they're trying to speed up the game, that we're not moving combat units onto the battle board and then everybody's analyzing offense or defense, anti-air, ground. You know, like on the main chart, one of the things that a lot of people talk about that slows the game up is once we start lining our guys up, then everybody spends like 2-3 minutes each figuring out where their guys are going. Now, in one single battle, that might add 5 minutes of game time consumed moving your counters around. But if you do that 15 times in a night, and you spend 5 minutes just doing that, you spend almost an hour and a half of your precious game time just moving counters, you know, all over this chart. So that's really, at the end of the day, that is the purpose of this quick battle system. Now, I know when Bryce and I first tried it out, the idea behind the quick battle system is that you don't move combat units to a battle chart. You just add up your totals and then you start rolling, okay? Now I'm just gonna go through the actual rules here, okay? So the first step is calculate all your dice rolls, okay? So I'm gonna do a very simple combat I pulled off over here. So it's just your typical British against Italians in North Africa. They're equal stacks, green, blue, yellow, okay? So the idea is whoever's at, let's say I'm going to roll the dice first. So let's just say Bryce is the British player. He'll be kind of managing the chits when I roll. So like when I tell him X has been killed, he can just pull it off on the side, and then we kind of reverse it when he's rolling, okay? So you do kind of have to team up a little bit with each other to just do some of the, the accounting. Like if you go, well, I killed your artillery and infantry, you can kind of move them to the side so these guys are dead and these guys are still alive, okay? Now, so on this example here, each side's rolling 6 dice. So each guy gets 3. So everybody's getting 3 for the artillery, 3 for the armor, 2 for the artillery, and 1 for the infantry. So that's 6 dice, okay? So we know both sides are rolling 6 dice. We're still rolling batches of 10, okay? That hasn't changed, and you can only roll up to 3 batches in a turn, so the 30 die limit is still in effect. One of the rules also about rolling in batches of 10, if there's ever a combat where, let's just say I have 1 infantry, so I only get 1 attack, if it's only 1, you get to round up to 2 dice, okay? Now this is per batch, so basically, it covers if you have 1 attack die, you get to roll 2 because you round up. If you have 11 attack dice, you go up to 12. Because on the second batch, you only have 1 die. So then on 21, it's the same thing. It would round up to 22. And that's because the third one is when we roll the dice, we match color pairs now. I know it's hard for you guys to see it, but if you pull it up on your iPad or your phone, you can, obviously zoom, you can read it. So everything is in pairs now. The concept of damaged units that were found on the main battle board, those are gone. So there's no concept of a damaged unit. You have to roll pairs. If you roll, let's say 1 yellow, you don't kill the infantry. It's not even damaged. It's considered a miss. So everything has to be in pairs. So I just grab 6 dice here so we can do an example to kind of show how this whole thing works. So I roll my 6 dice, and here they all are in their little jumbled state, okay? How I like to do it is before I even start telling, like if I'm playing, or whatever group I'm playing with, I'll just say Bryce. Before I even start telling them what I've hit, I immediately just kind of pair everything up. Put them in tier order. The tier order, guys, is still in effect. So remember, it always starts at yellow, goes up to blue, green, red, black, white, okay? So here's my example. So I rolled my 6 dice, and here it is. Okay, so I rolled 2 blues, so I know I killed 1 of his artillery. 1 artillery's dead. I rolled a green. By itself, that's nothing. Okay, so now it goes up to the next tier, blacks. Okay, blacks are wild, just like they've always been. And so this black, you can't just leave him out in limbo, so to speak. Although there is going to be a variation here that I guess you could do. But under normal circumstances, you'd take the black down to the green. So now I killed the armor. Now here's the deal with the whites, guys. Whites can only pair up if they're singles, okay? So I'm going to switch this black here real quick to a yellow. So let's say the roll was this, okay? So the whites can only pair with single units or with blacks, okay? And the whites go by turn order, okay? So the whites always start at yellow. So if there is a spare yellow, the white comes down here. And then in this example, because I have another white, that would slide in with the armor, okay? So I would kill the armor unit. Now, let's just say for the discussion, this was actually a red, which is an auto miss. That's how it would look. I can't take the white to the green because the whites start at the lowest rank and move up. So it would have to pair with the infantry, okay? So that's how this thing works. Everything is just in twos, in pairs. Now this was a small battle with limited dice. I just wanted to show you how the tiering works and how the base of the system is. I have other examples. We're gonna slowly get bigger on a couple of these combats so you can see how it all works out. Okay, so that's how you determine, you know, what gets hit or what gets destroyed, okay? Now, let's put in, okay, so let's just go to the next thing. We're still checking force advantage like we always do. I'll have a couple examples of that over here in a second. We talked about the pairing up of the wild blacks and the whites. Leftovers they don't carry over. They're basically just misses. And we now have a force advantage batch cap rule, which I'm going to get into in a second. But basically it means is if, let's just say, you know, this side here, you know, these guys have force advantage over them, so this side doesn't get blacks or whites. But let's just say this stack was a lot bigger and they actually had, let's say, 26 combat dice. Well, if this side, because they have force advantage, you have one less color, you can only roll up to 20 dice. So now they start capping, they start penalizing you in the larger combats on how many dice you can throw. And I have another example, which we'll get to here in a second. We'll just kind of quick fire go through those, okay? Now, let's just say in this battle, some air units are also present, okay? Now, how that works is just like on the original battle board, we do have before combat starts, we do have an air stage. So just like in the normal combat rules, air combats go first, then we go to surface. So before we're going to do the surface stage, you know, we're going to resolve this air battle. Okay, so we know both sides on the ground have 3 because artillery gives you 2 and armor gives you 1. Now, here's one of the big things also about the combat phase is planes and artillery, okay? They get to roll in both phases. The air no longer has to declare if they're going onto the ground attack or they're just doing an air attack. And that is a big difference from if you're playing the standard rules. Because now fighters and, you know, fighters specifically, you know, they have an attack in the air of 3 and they have an attack on the ground of 2. They get to do both. So that is a big change. And I'll talk about, at the very end of the video, I'll talk about that stuff. So basically what's going to happen here is we know both sides have 3 anti-air on the ground. The Italians have 3, 2, 6. So they'll have 9 anti-air and the British will have 6. So then you would just roll your dice like normal. Okay. So if we're just going to roll the British here, you know, we're looking for greens and all that kind of stuff. Well, I rolled a black, but I didn't roll anything else. So in this example, well, you know, I pair them up, but they don't hit because there's not greens. And I have 1 black, but we no longer have odd results, so that's a miss too. So I totally whiff at shooting down any of his planes. And I don't even damage one of his planes because that concept in the quick battle system is gone, okay? So as you can see right there in that very specific example, the British shot over here and completely whiffed. Well, now these guys get to come in on the ground. There are 2 each, so that's 4, 6, 3, 2, 1, so that's 6. So the Italians would get to roll 10 dice against the British ground troops. Okay, so the concept's still the same. We resolve the air combat first, all the anti-air and air combat, and then when we go to the land stage, any fighters that survive will then get to add 2 each onto the actual ground combat. Okay, so you got it? Okay, so that's a small combat. Now, let's pull up a bigger example here. Typical Russian front confrontation. So the Russians are completely monostacked in an 8 stack of infantry. So they get to roll 8 dice, because remember, infantry is 1 each. The Germans, they get 6 because of the armor, 6 because of the artillery, that's 12, and then 3 more for 15. So the Germans are attacking with 15 against 8. Now, the Germans do have force advantage, so the Russians don't get blacks and whites. And the other thing is the Germans have 3 color types and the Russians only have 1. Okay, so what that means is the Russians can only roll, because they have 2 more color types. The Russians, the maximum they can roll is 10 dice. Now you go, well, it's not a good example because they didn't go over 10, but let's just say the Russian Air Force showed up and they have a bomber and a fighter. Well, that's an extra 6. Let's say they get through with the anti-air and they don't get hit. That's 14. So that's 4, 2, 6 plus 8, 14. But because the Germans have 3 color choices and you only have 1, the Russians are maxed out at 10 dice. So it doesn't matter that they have 14. They can only roll 10 in total, okay? So that's kind of how the force advantage, situation looks like. Okay, so it's based on color types, and that reduces how many batches of 10 you can roll. Okay, now in a big battle like this, it's gonna start slowing it up a little bit more, because there's multiple rounds of dice for the Germans. Your other players are removing units. So, but it doesn't take as long as the main battle board does, okay? Now, if you go into a bigger example, like the gargantuan attack on Bryansk is going down, okay? And then we got air units. So you see, even with this type of system here, even with the quick battle resolution, it is going to take us a couple minutes just to kind of calculate how many combat dice we have, making sure we got our anti-air right, and stuff like that. So, but it does make it faster. I mean, setting up a big battle like this on the battle board for some players, this might take them 3 minutes just to make sure they're getting everything maxed out when it comes to their combat dice. So when you get into big battles like this, where pretty much everybody's rolling 30 dice, it's still the same thing. You're rolling in your batches of 10, you're pairing up by 2s, okay? But you just got to calculate it out. And then one of the things is on this chart, they're going to come up with a board that you can write these things in. These really help in the big battles where you can actually just write, your totals beforehand. So you're not like, hey, did you forget? Oh yeah, well, it looks like you have 26, and then you recount it and it's actually 28. That way you have a record in those big battles, okay? So that helps speed it up too, especially on the big ones, where you guys, if you don't have this thing printed out, you at least have a piece of paper where when you're adding it up, you don't forget about it and start stumbling around with it, okay? Now, like here's an example of the naval combat, okay? The naval combat works the exact same as the land combat. The values are a little bit different, and I don't have the naval one printed out or posted, but it's the same concept. So battleships are 4, CVs are 3, cruisers and subs are each 2. We still have the cruiser rule in effect. So remember on the cruiser rule, guys, when you're pairing up your dice, you know, you go by rank order. So we determine how many of the yellows are dead, if any of the blues are dead. But if the blues don't die, they can take the shots for the CVs and the battleships. So if, let's say, you killed my battleship and I still have a cruiser, I can sacrifice the cruiser instead. Okay. Once again, we're getting away from all the little odd results that can add up in combat. Once again, in this example, the British have 4 unit types and the Germans only have 1, but they got 6 subs, so the Germans would get 12 attacks back at them. But because of the batch limitations, with being monostacked against this, the Germans could only roll 10 dice, period. So they would basically lose 1 sub when it comes to the combat rules. Now, the other thing is, for the guys playing with the new Nano expansion, if after a batch of dice come out and there is an odd yellow lingering on the board, that enacts the Nano expansion rule where you can bounce a sub, you know, to an adjacent C zone, okay? So that's how that gets resolved. Now there's no more of this losing OSR for repair. The repair phase is gone. So if you have the odd yellow in this naval case, the sub gets to bounce, but you don't have to repair them like you do if you're not playing with the quick combat system, okay? So that's basically the quick combat system in a nutshell. So before I move on to something else here, I'm just going to roll a batch of 10, just a random batch of 10, and just kind of show you how to pair them up again. So remember, guys, you just, you know, as this is the way I do it, everybody has their own system. So I've just ranked them all up. So I know I got a red, so that's, we'll say it's a land combat, so this is an auto miss. I rolled 4 yellows, so there's 2 dead infantry. I got 2 blues, dead artillery, 2 greens, dead tank. This guy is just sitting out here. I got nothing to pair up, so that's a miss, okay? So that's what you're doing, guys. You're just pairing up your dice. Just putting them in batches of 2, and then once you get it all batched up, then you tell your opponent what you rolled. And I'm rolling reds like a fiend tonight. As we can see here, here's a really good example on just a random roll. So I've got 4 yellows, so that's 2 dead infantry. I've got an unpaired blue, unpaired green, and I've got an unpaired yellow sitting down here. And I rolled a white. Remember, the whites have to pair up with a single die, but they go by rank order. So in this example, it has to go down against the infantry, okay? So in that example, they would lose 3 infantry. Now, let's just say for the discussion in this very specific battle, well, you killed all my infantry. In fact, I only had 1 infantry. So these 3 dice here are misses because you don't have any infantry left, and the white gets paired up to the blue. So now it kills off the artillery. So 1 infantry, 1 artillery, and that green is treated as a miss because it's not paired up. So in that batch of 10, I would have killed 2 units. Okay? So that was just a couple brief examples, kind of going through the system and how it works. Okay? So, I hope that helped you guys. So now you know how the actual combat system works. When you're reading it, you saw some examples on the board, and off we go. Now, here's what I found playing it. Bryce and I and some of my other friends have played it now 3 times. And we have spoken to Thomas a couple times. I know Bryce has directly talked to him. I've talked to him just through chat and stuff. Is that the intention of the quick battle system is just that, to try to cut down time, but also at the same time, not really skew the results of the combat compared to if you're using this battle board. Okay, so this system, in this system, the idea is the results you find after you roll dice on this board and with this system, they're not going to be like really wonky or totally out of line. Now, that being said, the big difference between this board and this one is when you have, let's just say, that infantry unit, you roll a batch of 10, you kill 1, and then there's 1 still sitting here in the damage column. So what that means is in the next batch of 10, you got to carry over a hit from the first batch of 10 here, whereas with the quick combat system, this concept is gone, so you no longer have carryover. So what that does is it does reduce how many total units get killed in a combat, especially in, let's say, a 30 die showdown. On the first batch of 10, you might have 1 or 2 units lingering here in the white, so then on the next batch of 10, you'll kill them and then maybe kill some more. And so you see what I'm saying? We're keep adding these little add-on, these adders on this board. So the way this combat system works is going to be a little bit bloodier than what you're going to find up here. Okay? So you just have to be aware of that when you play with the quick combat system. The other big thing is over here on the naval side. Whoa! Whoa, come on, tripod. We no longer have the capital ships up here where it used to take 3 hits. That concept is gone. It only takes 2 to kill these guys now. Now, one of the things that Thomas did was when we originally played the game, or the system, I should say, the blacks and whites were just devastating. Well, blacks are always devastating, but the whites were basically, for all intents and purposes, a black result. So what we found when we were playtesting early, the first time through and the second time, battleships were just getting waxed. I mean, there was really no point in building battleships because they were so easy to kill. And Thomas's decision to switch the whites to go through rank order, where whites come from the bottom up, that was designed to make it harder to kill these battleships and these carriers. Now, you know, the original rules say whites can't hit subs. That still applies to the quick battle system. You can never put a white result on a submarine, okay? So this is a radical change, though, from this board to the quick system, is that battleships and aircraft carriers, and also on the flip side, the tanks lose their extra hit in the defensive. Okay, so that's a big change. And then, of course, the big one, in my opinion, is just up here. The normal combat system, air units have to choose. Are we fighting in the air or are we fighting against the ground? in the quick fire system or quick battle, they get to do both. So fighters are really strong in the quick battle system because they get to shoot at both aspects, whereas under this, you have to choose. Same thing down here. The big one when we talk about air units is the artillery. Notice if you elect to go against the air, you lose on the ground. So you have to, there's a choice, and that choice is gone with quick battle. It's just a 2 against the air and 2 against the ground. Okay. So here's I guess my thought is, I do like the quick battle system because it does do as intended. It does speed up the game. It makes it a little bit easier to just add up these units because they're all static, and off you roll, okay? The thing I don't like about it is, and I'm kind of with a lot of guys who I've talked to on the channel and on Board Game Geek, is a lot of guys feel that this is another cool aspect to the game that they really like. The idea of having to choose and having to make choices, okay? And I'm in that camp where I prefer this system just because I want to have the choices, okay? The other thing about it is the quick battle system was kind of also devised with this idea in mind of, like, if you're in a tournament environment where you might only have 4 to 6 hours to play a game, to try to speed it up, to make it go faster. When I'm playing over at the Eagle's Nest with Bryce and our other friends, time is a luxury for us. We could play it for 2 weeks. So we're not concerned about time. But that's our specific group, and every group has to make their own decisions. So you've been given a choice now. You can stick to using this, just acknowledging that this does take some time compared to using the quick combat system, okay? So, I mean, it's really up to your game group on which one you want to use. This is superior because of the choices that it presents, but the quick combat system does have its merits in that it is a lot quicker, it's a lot faster. And also for guys who think the game is like really bloody, well, the quick combat system will lower the expected amount of casualties. So the quick system, especially in territories that have, let's say, like 6 or more guys, you're going to get a lot more contested territories than you will on this board. Okay? So that's what you're getting into there. So that's basically where I'm going to leave it. So I went over, how the physical mechanics work, kind of gave you a rundown of the actual rules, gave you my opinion and also what's to be expected between the two systems on which one you use, okay? And, off we go. I mean, that's, I encourage every group, though, that plays War Room to at least play 1 or 2 games with the quick system, just so you can kind of get a feel of how that system works. And make that decision yourself instead of just saying, well, I only play with this board. I love this board. That's the only one I'm playing with. Well, I guess it's your game. You guys do what you want. But I would encourage you to at least give it a shot. Okay? Now, I guess the very last thing I will say is this system does have some concepts that I know a lot of guys do like, though. And, we'll have discussions about that later on. But some of these, you could take some of these concepts and put them on this board. You know, like the idea of now force advantage limits how many dice you can roll. You know, you can still do that on this board too. You know, you could actually, you know, that's a good idea that you could bring on over to this board. The other ones I wouldn't recommend because these rules are designed for this system. These rules are designed for this system. There's a couple areas I guess you could overlap a couple of the concepts found up here onto here, but at that point it's like, well then we don't have two systems to choose from, we just have this big mashup now. So I wouldn't really encourage going too crazy on pulling concepts from here onto this board. The only one I'd really probably explore is just the batches. And I think that's the only thing I would pull off of here and put on this board, okay? You can say, well, let's flip it. You know, I like the idea that the planes have to choose and, you know, the artillery has to choose and try to put that up here. But then it convolutes this system to the point of, let's just play with this board then. If that's how you want to do it, then let's not even discuss this. Let's just play it this way, okay? So that's it, guys. And then I will be back to finish off the German strategy and tactics section I've got planned. I've still got about 5 more videos there, 6 more. And then we'll finish all the nations off with Russia. And then I got a lot more ideas for more advanced level tactics. And there's still a lot of videos I got planned for tactics and some of the important concepts in the game I've never really covered, I've just kind of touched on. So I will see you guys later and keep playing your war room. Talk to you later. Bye.